Hello, and welcome to the Texas Association of Builders Zoom at Noon Virtual Education. In today's session, we will hear from Scott Sedam, President of True North Development, about on-site versus off-site construction methods. Make the right decision with total cost, total benefit analysis. The goal of TAB's education series is to offer an opportunity for you to gain new strategies and stay on top of the latest industry within our industry. Our speaker, Scott Sedam, President of True North Development, which is an internationally known consulting and training firm, focuses exclusively on the building industry. Now, in its 23rd year, True North conducts consulting projects and training workshops with more than 250 builders, suppliers, and trade clients. During the recent industry downturn, True North's lean building process saved clients more than $300 million, demonstrating clearly how to improve product and process while improving builder, supplier, and trade relationships. Scott is passionate advocate of the application of lean methods as a way to introduce cost without collateral damage that inhibits long-term growth and success. This session will focus on how off-site construction methods have been on the verge of revolutionizing the home building industry since the end of World War II, yet the promise remains unfulfilled. Scott will show you how to measure in a way that enables you to make the right decision for your home building process. Before we get started today, there's a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the presentation, Scott will do his best to answer all of your questions. And before anybody asks, this session will be made available on TAB's YouTube channel and is where all of our free education is available to you. Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Okay, here we go. Accidentally got ahead of slide. So this is on-site versus off-site of total cost analysis. And this has become a hotter and hotter topic. And certain things are coming together to cause that to be so, which you are probably experiencing there, certainly in Texas. We've worked all over most of Texas over the years. This is actually, I should update that. So this is our 25th year. So let's get right into it here and talk about objective current reality. Okay, so here's a reality. In the past 30 years, and it really goes back behind that, because I'll show you a couple of examples. This is the fourth cycle of the off-site manufacturing revolution that's going to change the world. And a lot of you, those of you who have been around as long as I have, I hope you're smiling right now, because we've all been through it multiple times, and it's come and gone away and come and gone away. But I think things are happening and coming together to change that. When I started with Pulte Homes in January of '89, long time ago, Bill Pulte was doing a workshop with all the new recruits. And he got talking about manufacturing applications in home building, which he was extremely interested in, being a Detroit guy and home in the auto industry. And it still is, despite the impression you might get sometimes in the media. But Bill held up his hands, and it was like this, and he said, we're just about this far since the end of World War II of manufacturing applications completely revolutionizing home building, about that far. And I was fortunate enough to see Bill. We stayed in touch even after I left, very amicable parting, but I wanted to go set up my own shop. And I saw Bill probably about a year before he passed away. And about 2017, and we talked about a lot of things, and I reminded him of his statement about how far we are from the revolution that will change home building forever. And I said, well, do you remember what you said 30 years ago? He says, yeah, I said it was about that far. I said, well, how far are we now? He says, oh, now we're about that far. So that's where we got in 30 years. And we've all seen it. We've been through it. Home Innovation Alliance, if you don't belong to that, you should. 2020 survey, it's free. They do a lot of great webinars and such. One of their surveys said only 7% of builders see manufacturing technology applied to home building as a solution to the trade shortage, which everyone is suffering under. Only 7%. So you think about math, it's what, about 1 out of every 15, every 14 builders saw it as a solution. I saw something recently, another survey that makes it look like that's up a bit now. But be it as it may, that's kind of where we are. But this, really, it's not new stuff. There are a lot of new things happening, but generally speaking, and I want to quickly remind you of the history of this. And a lot of the younger people don't know this history. Sears Modern Homes began in 1908, and from 1908 to 1942 sold 70,000 kit homes. They came in a boxcar. They had 30,000 parts, more or less. They had different models, and I encourage you to just Google Sears Modern Homes and hit the picture button and start going through the pictures. You will start to realize, where these houses are everywhere. And they were extremely popular. The only reason Sears stopped doing them, it was World War II, and their production capability went into things to fight the war effort. And then after the war, they never started up again. I don't know the reason behind that. They were pre-cut, numbered, everything included, new framing methods. Compare that to what we're doing today. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? So we'll go over here and take a look here. Real quick, I just found this. I have personal experience with Sears Modern Homes. This was my grandparents' house on Perkins Street in Rushville, Indiana. It's kind of between Indianapolis and Cincinnati, a town of about 7,500 people where I grew up. And that was my grandparents' house. And anybody who knows Sears Modern Homes knows that this was absolutely a Sears home. They even got a fake dog here in the front. My grandparents always had real dogs. And then down the block and around the corner was our house. And if you look at that, that is absolutely a Sears Modern Home. A little bit of an addition put it on here. That was a porch, which then as the family grew became a bedroom. And then eventually we moved to a bigger, more modern house. But it was a great house then. And it's still a really nice house today. So I know these houses very well. So I just want to emphasize that I am a believer in the manufactured technology revolution. It's going to happen. It has to happen. I'm an old manufacturing guy. I started after college at US Steel in their dying days. They still exist and they're making money now. I guess steel's way up, but they went in the area we were in from Gary, South Chicago. We went from about 35 employees to 12,000 in a 3-year period, and it wasn't all my fault. So I left US Steel, went back to graduate school, got a little more education, and got very interested in what was happening and changed the way businesses are managed. I ended up at Motorola, high-tech manufacturing, in the glory days where Motorola was the first winner of the National Housing Quality Award. They were one of only 2 American companies that ever won the Deming Prize, which was the highest award for quality in the country of Japan. Extremely difficult to do. Learned a great deal there and then went off to some consulting work and eventually got to Pulte, where I spent almost 9 years as a vice president on a corporate working on quality issues all around the country. Reality of housing is very little has changed besides trusses. Trusses have become very large, about 58% of the product nationwide, and the latest figures I was able to find are full truss, 75% partial, and that usually means the main part of the roof is truss, but maybe some dormers or gables are done in some cases stick built. But it's still quite amazing, given that technology has been around since before World War II, that we aren't at least 90% truss. Primarily the stick builts in the South, but just did a project in Buffalo, New York, and Buffalo is predominantly a stick built market, which truly surprised me. And then we have some of the data. Modular, latest data I could find was 3%, and that includes a lot of stuff that things are close to that. Panels are about 1.8%. a very interesting one because panels have come and gone, come and gone, come and gone. I have a friend who is president of a builder in Oklahoma City, and I asked him this. I said, how many times did you pick up panels and walk away from them again? And he said he couldn't even count in 30 years. So that's happened over and over. And we'll talk a little more about panels. Closed panels, where maybe you're doing drywall, maybe the windows are installed, maybe siding, maybe electric, or at least raceways for electric and plumbing. At this point, there's some amazing plants out there doing it, but it's a very tiny percentage. It's not enough to even register a percentage point. So what's the biggest obstacle? We've had these technologies, and there are tons of them out there, but why haven't we been able to adapt, take it? And why do we so often find building it on sites is more efficient, more cost effective? And stand back and think about vehicles or automobiles and trucks for a moment. You can imagine if they came and built that truck in your driveway outside over a period of 3, 4, 5, today 6 months would be unusual. They couldn't even remotely compare to cost and quality compared to when it's built in the automobile plants. So obviously they made that transition 100 years ago, and we still haven't figured it out. But I think I am on to the biggest obstacle. There's many, but the biggest obstacle, and we're going to talk about that. I think it'll really make a difference for you. Okay, we're going to have to go through things very quickly, but I've got some things you can write about it. I hope you'll catch the end. If you do have to leave early, if you send a request and just put Texas Association of Home Builders, and if you send that to me, you can send it to info at truend.com, TRUEN.com. It's short for True North, or just Scott. If you want to hit me direct, Scott at truenorth.com. We'll send you a series of columns I've been writing for 24 years now, every month in Professional Builder. And I've done quite a few columns on this, so we'll send them to you. So here's a big problem with panels. Inefficiently built panels are the norm. There could be someone on right now from a panel plant's offended that I said that, but most people who know will agree with me. It's actually rare that we find panels built as efficiently as stick-built framing in a house. Now, by the way, you can find plenty of that's built inefficiently. But the best framing, stick-built framing for panels is generally better than, the best stick-built framing in a house for walls is generally better than the norm for paneling. And I've been in countless plants, and I know all about things you have to do to ship them, but there are ways around that to do it. It can be done. We've seen a precious few of them do it. So once that starts to happen, the equation is going to look different and better. Another big issue is foundation consistency. Those of you who do crawls or especially basements know all about that. Getting the walls straight enough and not having to buck the walls into place back and forth, and getting the bolts and the straps and all right is a continuing issue, and it even happens on slab houses. Trusses do predominate. Okay, we saw that figure 58% to 65%, depending what all you're looking at. But I've had two examples in about the last year and a half. One was in the Southeast and one was in the Midwest, of companies that were stick building their roofs, and then literally with one guy with a measuring tape and a set of plans, another guy with a calculator and a clipboard, and me, in no more than an hour, we completely reversed the equation and showed them that truss, building by truss, would actually save them money, not even counting the saved days in the schedule. The issue is people don't know how to count this stuff, and we're going to talk a lot about it. Modular, the initial purchase cost for a modular is still a problem. You are going to pay more than that initial price. They haven't quite cracked the code on that yet, but there's a reason to believe that might be changing. And the value of cycle time is poorly understood, if at all. Once you start taking save day and cycle time into the modular equation, it starts to look a great deal better. So problem is, and I used this title once I was presenting to the national CFOs meeting that was run by Ernst & Young. So they had probably 80% of the CFOs of the 50 to 60 largest builders in the country. And my title was, "You Guys Don't Count So Good." And by the way, my mother was an English teacher. I had her for 7th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. She was a good teacher. I know that's bad grammar, but I wanted to get their attention. So I hope I got your attention about, we don't count so good. Now, how can I say that? Simple example, I just mentioned that the trusses being $1,500 more. Interestingly, in both those cases I gave you, both of them said they were about $1,500, and they couldn't justify that. But we turned out that the equation looked very differently. By the way, I've got a column coming out in December in PB about a whole list of things that we don't count very well in this industry. So you might find that interesting. So the questions I was asking these guys were this: have you really figured out the labor savings on truss versus stick frame? Now, I got a star there because this is what's going to happen, and some of you are going to experience that. If you have trades that have been stick building the roofs and you say, we're going to do trusses, they're not going to say, oh, goody, we'll get it done faster, I'll be able to reduce my labor. They're going to say most of the time, oh, that's going to take me just as long. That's not going to save me anything. So we recommend our builders that we do recommend changing over to, for the first year, don't try to cut their labor part of their contract. Just, they're going to start, after a while, they're going to figure it out. They're going to start realizing they're doing better. And after a year or so, then you're going to sit down and talk about, okay, Joey, you guys used to spend this much time, now you spend this much time. We need you to reflect some of that in the bid. And by that time, they're going to understand it. And they will probably, if they're bidding you, already have taken that into account. We've seen it happen many times. But don't be surprised when initially they say, oh, that's not going to help us any. Those of you who do trusses, imagine now, if you've been doing trusses for a long time, going out to your framers and saying, hey guys, we're going to start stick building these roofs. You are immediately going to get hit with an upcharge every time, because they know it takes more labor and it takes longer. Labor and materials to transfer point loads to the basement is a huge factor. A lot of people miss all of this, but it seems like everybody misses at least 50% of it. Purlins, posts, beams, headers, piers, and I believe the next one we have thickened footers and grade beams. You can usually eliminate somewhere between 70% and sometimes 100% of all that stuff. Dimensional lumber, engineered wood, steel post, maybe the engineered wood post, any type of pier, excess headers, whether you're doing with dimension or doing with land beams. It's remarkable what you can pull out. Then you get down, whether you're doing a grade beam or thickened footer in a slab, or you're going down in a basement and doing both of those and or piers. Again, 70 to 100% of that you're going to eliminate. So have you counted that? Have you fully valued it and the time that it's going to save? A reduction in site waste, there's no question that you'll get some reduction in site waste when you're doing trusses or panels. And the more you do, the less site waste. NHB did a survey, and it was an average of 4 high-side dumpsters a house. Now, people do it in different methods. But if you think 4 high-side dumpsters, which are costing anywhere from $200 to $500, sometimes $600 a load, you could very well be looking at $1,000 right there. So be conservative and say it's $500 or $600. You know it's going to be that much. Did you take that into your calculation? Reduction in cycle time is huge. We're going to talk more about that, and I'm going to show you a tool and give you a tool to use for that. But almost nobody counts the true total impact value of cycle time. And we have a tool that enables you to do it. And it's been run with over 100 builders now. It absolutely works. And then if you do all that work, you're going to go from a $1,500 loss to about a $1,500 positive no-brainer. Interesting, with both those builders, they came out about the same. We've done other builders that had different numbers, but that's good to keep in mind. And it can get better than that down the road once the trades realize they can bid you tighter and you learn how to save the cycle time days better. Okay, so simple truth. There's bid price and there's total cost. And for years, I would say total cost. And in the last couple of years, I've started to say true total cost, just to emphasize that there's something more there than most people are looking at. The truth is, if we don't measure and evaluate really everything we buy, but especially I'm going to show you in this realm, you cannot make the right decisions. A certain amount's going to be guesswork. You might get lucky and make the right decision. I guess that's possible, but you're not going to consistently make good decisions if you don't measure and evaluate using true total cost. Anything short of that leads to sub-optimization. You might be good. Hey, you're making money now. I understand, but you're leaving it on the table. Dr. Deming had a famous quote. Some of you don't know who that is, but he was the world's foremost quality guru. He passed away 30 years ago last January, but I got very lucky that I got to know him personally. We had a group in Detroit, and he used to come and consult with the auto industry primarily. I was the only home builder that attended those meetings. But one of his things he would do when he was even 90 years old, he'd be in front of a group of 400 or 500 people, do a 4-day workshop. Imagine that. I guess that's my goal when I'm 90, to be able to do a 4-day stand-up workshop in front of 400 people. And Deming looks down at his shoes, and he took quite a long time to do this. And I won't impersonate his voice till the end, but I'll talk about a little about how he was talking that as a 9-year-old. And he always wore these very heavy wingtip brome shoes, with all the, applique on them and everything. And he always wore those. And he stood in front of the group on the stage. He'd look down at his shoes, and he'd look up again, kind of look around and look at his shoes and look out, grin. And once I saw him do 4 of these workshops. I heard a guy says, "Did he have a stroke?" And they're worried because he went through this 6 or 8 times. And he goes, "Somebody asked me how much these shoes I'm wearing cost me." So he threw that out there, looked down, looked at the group. He did this 3 or 4 more times, looking down, looking up again. Then he finally looks through and he goes, and I'll try to do his voice. He go, "I told him, I don't know. I haven't finished wearing them yet." Then he'd say, "Talk about it amongst yourselves." And he'd go back, sit down for 10 minutes. And then he'd come back and say, "Tell me what you learned." And people would do it. Everybody did everything Dr. Deming said. And I'll tell you what, you just think about that and use that example. You're switching to a new product. What's it going to cost you? You can't possibly know until you're finished using it. And that's going to include a warranty period. So our inability to understand and measure true total cost is going to continue to be our single biggest obstacle if we don't do something about it. And most of you on today are builders, and builders, first thing on their mind is show me the money. And I understand that. I'm an entrepreneur too. If you're going to do something, we're going to change something, we got to see the money. Regardless of the method, we're going to build great houses and have happy customer. But if we can learn to do it more intelligently, more efficiently, that's great, but we better be able to show you the money. So a little bit of on-site versus off-site total cost analysis. So bid price versus true total cost, an ongoing home building fail. And I want to point out that there shouldn't be a versus up here. If you really learn how to measure, you're never going to be able to get yourself to just take bid price and take the lowest bid price. It could turn out the lowest bid price is the lowest true total cost, but there's no one on this workshop today who's a builder who hasn't been burnt by low bid prices many times. And they found out down the road the low bid price actually was not the lowest total cost. So there's no verses here if you learn how to do it, but still the great majority of stuff in this country is still bought in home building on bid price alone. And we've seen pure evidence of that. So remember, total cost, true total cost is the only thing that matters at the end of the day. Okay. So we're working on an Excel template for this, for manufacture, similar to our save day calculator, our trip cost calculator, which I'm going to show you. But it is very complicated. It goes way further and way deeper. And right now I'm not happy with the level of complexity. So we're working to see if we can kind of simplify it and still capture what needs to be captured. So we're working on that. I hope to be able to announce that's ready, but it might be the first of the year, I hope. So calculation of true total cost. But for right now, here's what you need to know. First thing, really understand your level of complexity, where you are on that. So we're going to go like this. The simplest are just subcomponents. Stairs, doorways, cabinets, stoops, a window trim. You know, I saw just recently, you know, the windows coming with the trim on the inside of it, but also the wall trim and exterior trim. We're starting to see that a little bit out there. That could potentially save a great deal of time. It's all pre-cut, the miners are perfect, and it goes together really fast. Roof truss, I have that second. Most of the money is spent there now because it's been around a long time. Almost everyone understands roof truss, although many don't understand the true total cost differences of stick versus rough. Then we get into various engineered wood products, web trusses, TJI, that should be TJI, not TGI, sorry about that. A lot of people say TGI, but it's truss joists. And those are manufactured products that are designed to speed up, ideally, construction process. So we don't have to nail 3 2x12s together in a specific pattern with spacers in between. And we can just put up our TGI or lamb beam in that case. Probably should. So wall panels, the simple version, most people have seen that. And then there's closed walls panels, and there's more exotic versions like SIPs. Those have been around a long time. I remember going to a fantastic SIPs plant literally 30 years ago. It'd be 30 years ago this January. And I remember that because a good friend of mine, an incredible guy I was with, and he unfortunately passed away during that next year. And I remember that it was 30 years ago. We had SIPs out there, and they're out there, but still they have not caught on to any significant degree. We have pre-cut and labeled frame packages, BMC Ready Frames, the big name in that. It's a great package. It does a really good job. But if you look at what Sears did over 100 years ago, we're talking about 100 and probably 113 years ago, it was more sophisticated than what we're doing in our pre-cut and labeled frame packages today. So 113 years later, we aren't as sophisticated as Sears was. Floor cassettes and roof cassettes. If you're not familiar with that term, that's what they call when you pre-build sections of the floor or roof. We travel all over the country. There's 5 key guys in the company, along with some architects and engineers that we bring in for consults frequently. And we're all over the country. And we very rarely see roof cassette and floor cassette. I believe that's going to change, and we'll talk about why. But if you haven't seen that, Google that, and you can find YouTube videos, and you'll find it really interesting. Then we get to engineered precast foundation. Again, the first one of those I remember seeing in person was, that would have been in '89, shortly after I started back with Pulte way back. And I was in, I believe, Raleigh, North Carolina. And we saw engineered precast foundation. I could say it was the Superior Wall brand. And at the time I thought, oh my God, in 5 years, the whole country will be doing that. Well, I don't know, I couldn't find any data on the percentage, but it's a comparatively small percentage of the business. And there's reasons some real, some imagined, why it's taken them a long time, but it is an opportunity to save schedule days, certainly, and to build straighter, more waterproof foundations. We won't get in that discussion today. People argue this back and forth all the time, but it is a manufactured application to home building. And again, we've got to look at true total cost. Offsite assembly with on-site erection. That was like Integra, and then Katera, which spent what I've heard of 1.4 billion of other people's money and went under. Integra is doing well, doing much better. If you don't follow them on YouTube or LinkedIn, Jerry, their president, is really a bright guy and a crusader and knows the stuff. And we're seeing more of it. And there are all sorts of things out there happening right now, a couple of which I know about that I've got non-disclosure signs, so I can't talk about them specifically or the companies, but there's some things really coming down the pike in that regard. And then one, finally, it'd be fully modular. You do a foundation, set them up, and if things go well, we can have that house ready to go in just a couple, 2 or 3 days. Might have to do a little more inside work, but within a week, it can be ready to go. So there's your levels of complexity that we're talking about. So keep that in mind. So what do we measure when we want to do this total cost comparison? Well, this is my calculator template. And if anybody happened to see the version of this I did for ProConnect 3 weeks ago, I've already changed a couple things. And then about a month ago, I did an audio with Horizon TV. I hope you all subscribe to that. The professional builder and professional remodel people put that out. It's usually about a 15 to 20 minute video. They usually come out on Thursday. But I did one for Horizon. There's been some changes. So this is the 10. I probably should put the date today, like the 10. I think it's the 6, maybe 10/6/21 edition. Because it'll probably change a little more. This is an evolving thing. And I got a guy probably no one's heard of at this point on this but me. His name was George Box, and he was a consultant. He's also an esteemed professor at University of Wisconsin. I got to meet him a couple of times. And he had a saying. He said, all models are wrong. Some models are useful. So we go into this as is today. It's wrong in that it's not 100% correct of the template as of now. I know it will change and evolve and get better. It's happened with our other Excel templates, but I think you will find thinking this way very useful. So we're going to look at costs associated, positive and negative, the impact of design. Okay, for example, your roof pitch. There can be a big break at about 6-7 versus 8-9. And anytime you see 8, 9 and above, you're spending extra money. Once you get to 9, if you are doing trusses, you're doing piggyback trusses, which cost more, take more time and money. Not saying you shouldn't do them, but you got to look at true total costs and say, does this make sense? Or you go down to Louisiana and you have ranch houses with 12 pitch roofs on them. I don't know, you're in a hurricane zone and you put the biggest sail you can possibly put on the roof. It makes no sense to me, but most builders who have tried to bring those pitches down have a hard time selling them. So I'm not telling you lower roof pitches, but you know, really good architects can design fantastic looking houses with 6, 7, 12 pitches. So that's one example of many. You know, did they design with cantilevers? Did they design with space over a garage, which can get way more cost than anybody think it does? And they think they're getting it cheap, but you actually never are. So design issues, what are the cost implications? We could do a whole workshop on that. Then the obvious one to everybody is direct labor and material. What are the deltas going to be? Direct labor, material, but whatever level we've picked on the previous slides. Let's say to keep it simple, let's say we're going to start doing wall panels, and we haven't done that before. So what is the difference in direct labor material? Obviously, your framer has less labor. You should have less material. Doesn't always work out that way, as I described. And but you want to look at both, eyes wide open, no assumptions, and come up with real numbers. On-site waste is going to go down if you use panels. And what's the value of that? We talked a little bit about that previously. Builder admin and overhead. Virtually no one tracks this. If you were doing, let's say you had been doing all stick built and you convert over to panels and trusses and maybe pre-built stairs and some stoops and various other pre-built components, you are going to have less places you have to do bids, invoices, send checks, because you're going to reduce the number of points in the system. And the time spent overseeing it, manage it, and supervision is absolutely going to get easier if you learn how to do it well and you have good suppliers. This is a huge one. And if you're interested, if you send me an email, just put VPO down in there too. I wrote a series, about maybe it'll be come up on 3 years. I meant to write one article on VPO, but then I had to do another one and another one. And I actually did 4 of them. And my editor, Denise Durson, best editor of all time, she called and says, Scott, you got to quit with the VPO stuff. We usually don't let people do 2 in a row. But I have that package. If you want, I'll send you a PDF with those in here. And here's the problem. Virtually no one in America or Canada measures VPO fully accurately. Virtually no one. So I'm safe in saying you think you do. No, you aren't. And if you want to know how, call me. We'll talk about it. Or I'll send you the articles. And then you'll start to understand. And the clue on this is almost no one counts cycle time and no one counts overhead for not just the builder, but also the supplier and trade associated with variants, commonly called VPOs. But there are, accession purchase orders, field purchase orders, whichever term you like to use. But it's a huge factor. And your VPOs, if you're doing it right, should change and should be reduced as you're converting toward more manufactured applications. In process rework should absolutely go down. People are pretty good at counting warranty, but generally people are not counting in process rework, fixing it as you find it and you go before the customer gets to the house. They're just glad they get it done. But you need to start tracking that and know so you can make honest, true total cost comparisons. And here's a little differentiation that's important. There's trips to the building site, but there's counting the planned trips, the trips that have to be made today, and then the wasted trips. We find there's an average, we used to say 10,000, but we've got more updated. You can count on an average of $12,000, $13,000 a house on wasted trips to the building site. You think you don't have them? We can prove it to you. We have now something close to 5,000 data points on that. So I love good arguments. Call me, we'll argue about it, but you got to bring your data because I've got 4,800 data points. So planned trips, those ones that have to be made, and the wasted trips, that if things went right, trips that shouldn't have had to be made to the building site. A lot of the ones we think are planned have to be, we don't have to make. And as you get better at manufacturing applications, you will have less trips to the building site. Cycle time, cost value, that's been another theme of mine for 30 years. I've been writing about it I've been writing for 24 plus years. Cycle time is huge, and I'm going to show you a little, I'm calculating that. Warranty costs, that should be obvious. If you go to more manufactured, will you reduce warranty? Maybe you find you don't. You should, but that's not a guarantee. It's got to be done right. Equipment requirements, right? I've been amazed over the years, the gang of guys that can hand up big trusses on the roofs by hand. It's scary, it's a little dangerous, but it's amazing what they can do. It's a lot better if you have a crane or a high-low on site. If you have panels, some of those panels will go 65 feet long. How many guys is it going to take to walk a 65-foot panel? Yes, I know it can be done. I've seen it done. But generally, you're going to want to have some equipment if you're really smart, pay for it, have the equipment there. So it's various improvements in this area. As you get more manufactured components, they tend to get bigger, heavier, and you might have some equipment requirements. So to be fair, you got to bring those in against the cost. We can't pretend like they aren't there. And finally, safety. If we have fewer man hours on the house, we're going to have better safety. And it may not happen on one house or 5 houses, but over time that's going to happen. So look at that. Look at your risk exposure and how this will impact it. So there's 12 things. If you want to get a truly accurate comparison, you're going to have to do. It may seem like it's a lot, but you tell me, which of these can you skip? So I'm going to really quick show Excel template. We don't have time to go through them. Just check my time here. Oh, we could talk a minute here, but if you could, it's kind of hard to see on these. I think I got to blow up here. We have two. We have the save day opportunity. And oh, I happen to put the Spanish language in here. Okay, calculadora de costos de viaje. But we have them actually in 4 languages. And then what we do is, for example, the Canadian ones that are mostly English, we do have the Revenue Canada figures in the formula for the vehicles. And here we update the IRS numbers every year. And if they update sooner than that, we update them. So you always have the current figures in there. So this is trip cost calculator. And we do, here's your standard trip, here's your extra trip. What does the trip to job site really cost? You put in your preparation time, your shop to site time, people, vehicles, time, distance. Vehicles is here, and we allow for different types of vehicles. These guys do have a flatbed here with a light trailer, and that's part of the reason that you see the number you do. And in other one, it might be nothing like that, but they might have 3 vehicles going out to the site. And by the way, don't kid you, if your trades show up at the site and you don't pay them until they get there, you still want to be thinking about the extra cost of them if you have a job not ready or unable to complete in the time schedule. That's a whole nother additional cost. And then you have opportunity cost. An opportunity cost is when you have a wasted trip to a building site, not is it going to cost you, you're never going to make a cent on that time. So it's a double whammy. Most research on that says figure 50% opportunity cost. So if you look at these guys, they have a trip of a trip is $255. And this was a window company. I changed the name. Window, this is a real one, someone did. This one over here is someone going out probably to adjust the window, okay? $71. Okay, one guy going out to fix something with a little prep time. If it's unable to complete, you're going to add another $33 on there. I think that's typically kind of low. And then your opportunity cost, you can make a case that you're looking at something like $430 for a wasted trip here. By the way, we get real conservative and say, we're going to count them. We're just going to say, okay, they're $200 because we know they're going to average much more than that. Okay, save day. This is something that I spent literally years working on, figuring out, talking to people. And we have to go through this quickly. But if you look here, we got a $340,000 house, which they're still out there. That's starting to look low. I saw yesterday, I saw median, not mean, but median was right at 400,000. So this is now a somewhat lower priced house, hard to believe. And you put in all your numbers, and these are sample numbers here that I get every year from Chuck and Shin. They do the survey on that. And then we put in your overheads, in here, your percentages, and then you put on your fixed and variables over in here. And that was really the key to it, because saving a day, what it's doing is amortizing your fixed cost more quickly. And that's where the real savings come from. Some of you count interest, some of you count maybe some insurance savings, but hardly anyone counts the full Monty. In this builder's case, one work day saved is right at about $75,000. $75,000 for a work day saved. Now they're doing 150 units, so one day. So that comes out, that should here, okay. Sorry, I already went by this. So what if we can apply that to everyday production fixed and variable being the key, absorbs fixed costs. So one day, here it is, 75,000 bucks over 150 units is $500 per unit per day. About the lowest we ever see is $450, and we have seen as high as $700 to $800 a day on higher end, high bling houses. Okay, so this particular company, they set up some goals, and they had to said they start saying, okay, what if we can save 14 work days on their schedule? And look, how many days up here now? Their current cycle time is 140, and that 14 work days would take it to 120 calendar days. So the formulas make an adjustment for weekends and holidays and stuff in there. So that's why those don't match exactly. By the way, if you can apply all of those days to additional construction at this new rate, that means you could build another 17.4 homes. Then you're going to go back and say, wow, are we going to keep these same percentages? Are we going to have to hire another superintendent to do that, another salesperson to do that, up our advertising budget to sell these houses if we build them? And you can play what-if games with this all day long in this and work these through. But this one comes out $1.2 million if we get 14 days, and that won't be exactly 14 times the previous one, because there's some of them because of different how weekend days fall and holidays and such. It'll be very close, but if you do that, it's a little different, slightly different. That's why. And then they said, well, what if we get back to the old used to be? 6-7 years ago, they were at 90 days. I said, what? And now they go back. They were at 140. What if we get all the way to 90? That would take 36 work days to get the calendar days down to 90. Potential here is 4,177,000. Now we tell people for a target, just start with half of that. Just start. I mean, $2 million is enough to get your attention, and start with half of that. And hey, we've had builders do a lot better than that, but start there, be conservative, and start working on it. All righty. So here's something, these worksheets, I'm not completely done with these. I'm working on them yet, but to give you an idea, imagine if you're going to start doing on-site and off-site, and we're going to look at things like foundation, frame, floor systems, all these different things that would change, that could potentially, and there's more than it's on here. This would be one that, you'd be pretty much going to off-site construction, or off-site manufacture, on-site assembly. You're described to change, and here's what most people do. They count labor and material, right? But we're saying you have to also count your indirects and overheads, and we gave you a list of those earlier, and your cycle time impact. Now you get your total dollars. So you look at, what are you spending today on-site? What might you be spending if you went off-site? And that could be just one of these. You might just truss. Could be just one thing, but you might be doing a bunch of these. And then you do your deltas, on-site to on-site. What are the difference in dollars, labor, material, indirect overhead, cycle time, total dollars, and percentages plus or minus. And you'll start to get a really good picture of this stuff. Now, behind this, you're going to have to do more work before you get to this page. But I thought it was best to show you that one first. You're going to have to do some worksheets that look like this. Okay, let's just take direct labor. We're going to have, what do you spend on-site right now? And the notes associated with it. What's off-site, the notes, and what's your difference? And do both dollars and percentage. Percentages can fool you sometimes. So both dollars, I should put a dollar sign in here too. I will do that. So direct, material, indirect, cycle time, transportation, equipment. These look familiar? Okay. You saw them on, and there was theft here too. That's one that I didn't have earlier, but that's one that if you do off-site, more on-site manufacture, you are going to have less theft. It's really hard to carry away wall panels from a site. Okay, so that's a lot of work. I understand. So my question to you is, what part of it are you going to skip without missing something? And you're going to miss a lot. So without the leg and brain work, you're going to make continual mistakes in calculation and evaluation. It's not if, you will. And you can't rely on just being lucky. You might get halfway there and something in the other half changes and you miss it. And remember this, bid price means nothing in the absence of knowledge of true total cost. Someone gives you, and I hope if your senior managers on this, you sit down with your purchasing people and say, folks, we've got to start looking at this true total cost stuff. And you can't come to me. I know I've always pushed you on bid price, but now it's going to be, yeah, we want to see the bid price. That's one factor, but we want to see true total cost. We are trying to make this easier for you, not create more work for you. So my question is, it's going to take another 113 years. Well, I don't believe so, because some things are changing. There's three critical elements converging right now. The need, you all felt that. You all represent the need. The need is everywhere. I'm on the board of trustees for the Home Builders Institute, which is the biggest trainer of trades in the United States and growing, and some phenomenal things are happening in that regard. That is getting better. But if they if HBI gets max capacity, it's not going to be nearly enough. I just heard from a friend earlier today, he saw a projection of 1.8 million units for next year. We all know there's no way that's going to happen because we can't build that many with the trade base we have. It just, we can't do 1.8 million. If a year from now, or a year from December, to see if you call me back and say I was wrong, but I bet you dinner on that one. We'll have a really good year, but it's not going to be 1.8. The second convergence is, oh, maybe I didn't put that one up yet. The first one was need. Okay, we just talked about that. Sorry, I was looking at the look ahead screen. The second is innovation. What's going on in innovation here the last few years puts everything else done in the previous 20, 30 years to shame. It's amazing. There are so many companies. There's some of the really big ones, and there's some real small startups doing some absolutely amazing stuff. I would say one of their names, but then I'd have another 5 or 7 of them mad at me for not mentioning their names, and someone else would complain to Lorraine, hey, you should, you know, so I don't want to put Lorraine in that situation. And, but there's a lot of them out there. If you have any extra investment money, seek some of them out, put some money into them. I can't say which ones for sure, but some of these guys are just going to have an incredible impact. The innovation is there. It's coming gangbusters. You're going to be amazed what you see in the next few years. And then the dollars. There is so much money behind this in the innovation, pushing that way. There's also a lot of money pushing toward trade training too, which is good. But again, we've got to have both. We have to have more trades, and we have to have significant manufactured applications to home building to get people in houses that are well built and affordable and work real well, last a long time. So that's where we're going with this. These three things have come together here, and I believe this, which I would consider the fifth wave, it's going to happen. So time is now. There's nearly an identical scenario out there. If you look at electric vehicles, and I'm in Detroit, so I hear about it all the time. We see them driving, they call them mules. They cover them with all sorts of styrofoam and stuff, so you're not supposed to know what they are. And you see them almost every day. You can see one in the Detroit area. But they're going gangbusters, investing a fortune. And there's some real leadership. You've probably seen the new F-150. That's all electric. They were going to make 100,000 of those. They're already sold out. They're going to do 200,000, and it looks like they're going to be sold out of those too before they start to plant. Now GM and Ford, Chevrolet have also announced they're going to do an all electric. Cadillac saying they're going to be, I think I saw 60% all electric by 2030, and Ford's talking about doing it even sooner than that. So look what's happened. 10 years ago, it was kind of a fantasy, kind of a joke. Then 5 years ago, we started seeing them in Teslas. We said, you know, this could become real. And today, at least if you live in Detroit, you hear this stuff all the time. There's no question. It's happening. You may have heard the country of Norway, as of, I believe, January 1st, you will no longer be able to buy anything but an all-electric vehicle. So it's happened in their industry, and they never thought it would. It's going to happen in ours. So remember, as the good Dr. Deming said at the end of all of his workshops, all we have to offer you is profit. So thanks being with us today.